Hey y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, today we're going to tackle the Pick 5 on Saturday at Keeneland as part of our Keeneland card series. And there's a couple of really good stakes races in there, including the Lexington and the Jenny WIley, which should be a really good race. And looking forward to seeing that one. So let's take a look at the fields and see what we got. The first leg of the Pick 5 is the 7th race at Keeneland. It's an N1X allowance for 4-year-olds and up on dirt running a mile and a 16th. The first thing we want to note is the configuration of the track. In this case, they will be finishing at the 16th pole, so there's a short stretch. So horses on the engine or up near the lead tend to have a bit of an advantage over the late runners. Speaking of late runners, we've got number 1, Barber Road, like the ultimate closer. He has been throughout his career. Lately, I think they've tried to remedy that by getting him a little closer up to the pace. As you can see in his last race, they put blinkers on him as well. But this one is just so hard to trust. He looked like he had that last race won, and yet he got nailed at the wire. He's got a lot of seconds, and it's awful hard to trust this one as a win candidate. If you want to use him, go ahead at your own risk, but I would personally use this one underneath in the exotics. I think that's a better option. Number 2 is Graphic Detail. This one looks, he's by Practical Joke, and I think distance is a little bit of an issue for this one. You see, he's run a couple of times at a mile at Turfway, and he didn't do bad. He's got a second and a third. But if you look back on his dirt form at Gulfstream, he was kind of up the track in the Mucho Macho Man. Maybe he's improved a little bit since then, so perhaps we can give him some credit. All weather to dirt is not really a great angle for Paulo Lobo, so you don't have that to think about. But he is moving from synthetic to dirt, and as we know, that can be a really good angle. And Turfway form has been holding really well at Keeneland. I probably would not use this one because I think I have questions about the distance, and I'm not confident with this run around 2 turns on dirt. But I could see a reason to use them. I just leave it up to you what you'd like to do with them. Number 3 is York Tavern. Again, another one coming from Turfway, and that form is held up pretty well. He's trained by Cherie DeVoe, and she's got Brian Hernandez on him. So this one is one to think about, perhaps. Took a little while to break his maiden, but he seems to be coming around, and I think he's maybe moving into a state of improvement. You can see he won on the front end at Turfway on synthetic around 2 turns, and that is not easy to do. So I think there's some value here. We want to. There might be some talent, so we want to be thinking about that. The last race, they took him back a little bit. He kind of ran evenly. He was about mid-pack, and he made a little bit of move at the top of the stretch, but then flattened out. That was a bit of a class jump from what he's used to, so that might be a little bit of a red flag. But at 15-1 and with coming off synthetic, I think that maybe you think about this one for underneath. I'm not sure he's a win candidate, but I think he could definitely finish in the exotics. Number 4 is Principe de Oro. He is trained by Todd Pletcher, and he's got a Rod Ortiz on him, and he's owned by Judmont Farms. You can't get any better connections than that. Obviously, he's a $650,000 yearling at the Keeneland September sale. Tells you there's some expectations. This one, in his last race, set awful fast fractions around for a 1-turn mile. And I think that's to be expected coming off a fairly decent layoff. I mean, he hadn't run since April of last year. So he might have been a little keen. I thought he kept on pretty well to get third. He still looked like he had some run in him, and he wasn't totally worn out. So I think that bodes pretty well for this start. I expect he'll be a lot more relaxed this time and probably run a more professional race. And I think he's a logical win candidate. You get him at 6-1, I think that's a pretty good thing. Husband Material had another one with a real long layoff. He basically missed his 3-year-old campaign. His dirt form is all the way back to 2 years old, and he broke his maiden in the mud, and he won by 20 lengths. So obviously, if it rains on Saturday, maybe reevaluate him. Other than that, I thought he was okay on dirt, nothing special. Coming off the layoff, they moved him to turf, and you see he's had 2 starts, and he's been okay to mediocre. Up to the mark. It's just running a stakes race at Keeneland, so he's faced some in strong quality. Just won an N2X allowance at Keeneland today. So this one's pretty good, or he's facing some pretty good fields, I should say. His third off the layoff isn't a great angle for Jimmy Toner, nor is turf to dirt. So I would consider this one a cut below, and I wouldn't use him in any regard. Crump is from a hot barn. Brendan Walsh has really been on it for at Keeneland to start the meet. So we always want to keep that in the back of our mind, and maybe we upgrade a little bit in terms of evaluation. This one took a long time to break his maiden, and he's been in the N1X even longer. And he's collected some checks, that's true, but he appears to not have the will to win. And he looks like he runs on the front end, or they've been doing that lately, and he gives up the lead. So this one, his buyers look a little light as well. Maybe because he's in a hot barn, you think about him underneath, but I wouldn't use this one. I just don't think I don't think you can trust him enough, and he's not good enough. Tepru, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is also from Brendan Walsh. He's got Johnny V aboard, and I think this one has some good potential here. You can see it took a couple times to break his maiden, but the most important thing is that he improved with every single start and got a little better each time, and that's to be expected with Brendan Walsh horses. And you see his first effort against winners around 2 turns this very distance. He had a really nice race. And he made a big move, and he just kind of got outkicked at the wire. But I think that's really encouraging coming out of the maiden ranks. So his next effort, not so good at a mile and 1/8. He was up near the lead, just sort of just flattened out. And but he was also running against some pretty good horses. Strong Quality, like I said, just won at Keeneland, N2X on turf, open road, Tis Ride Time. Those are pretty good contenders. So maybe we can cut him some slack on that. The class level here is not like that. So I think he has a pretty good chance to factor in this race. He is a first-time gelding, and so I think it may explain the long layoff and maybe why he had some problems in his last race. But Brendan Walsh is 22% with 180 days or more layoff. So I like the work tab, so I think this one is logical to be a win candidate. Master Game is it's not often that you see a horse drop to the claiming ranks able to resurface at the allowance level. But this might be a different case. But you see this horse, when he was trained by Mark Casse, they had to drop him to the maiden 40 level in order to get his diploma. And he was then claimed. They left him in, and they dropped him for 30. And he was claimed away by Grant Forster. Now, usually when an outfit like Mark Casse or Todd Pletcher, Bob Baffert, any of those bigger barns puts a horse up for claiming, most of the time it means they can't run. And so it's advised whether or not to claim them. So this one, they claimed for $30,000. You know what? It turned out to be a great move because obviously Grant Forster's had the right touch because his last 2 efforts around 2 turns at the starter allowance level have been really solid. And he got a win the last time, even with an awkward start. So this one is definitely on the upswing. Now, the only question I have is whether or not he can do it at the N1X level. This might be considered a kind of a step aside class-wise as opposed to a step up, given this field. So maybe this one has a pretty good chance. And 7-2 isn't bad. I think a lot of money is going to go to the Pletcher horse as well as Barber Road. So I'm expecting you get an overlay with this one, maybe up to 4-1, 9-2, even 5-1. And I think at that price, this one is a pretty good option. So I would consider using. So let's take a look at the second leg. The second leg of the late pick 5 is the 8th at Keeneland. It is the Giants Causeway Stakes. It's ungraded for 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares, and it's on the turf course at 5.5 furlongs. So this is kind of one of those anything can happen type of races that turf sprints a lot of times turn out to be. So let's see what we got here. Number 1 is Trained to Artemis or Artemis. And he's a fairly good fit in the class here, but the last two, he was the chalk. One of them he got, the last one he didn't, and I'm not sure the fields stack up to the kind of competition he has here. His running style is he's gonna have a lot of problems because of his running style, because there's others in here who are more accomplished, who like to run the same way. So I think this one's a little bit up against it, and likely might very well get shuffled back because of the early speed to the outside of him. So don't really like this one, but he, maybe he can get underneath. He does have some talent, but I just think others appeal more for me. Creative Credit is interesting to me because I think he's a ready toss, but I will say this. He went in the Franklin Stakes 2 back at Keeneland. He he was on the lead, and he gave Twilight Gleaming everything she could handle, and until Caravel and the cavalry came through and blew her back. But it was just kind of funny to me that she just stuck with Twilight Gleaming all the way up until like a furlong left. I don't think she's going to do that here. Her form has really fallen off over her last four starts. And maybe the freshening is going to help a little bit, but I kind of have a feeling Father Time is catching up with Creative Credit, and it's nice to see Perry Oots in a stakes race. He's a 62-year-old jockey, if you didn't know, and he's been down at Turf Way and Ellis Park for years, River Downs, places like that. But I don't think even the sentiment there is going to save this one, so I'm throwing this one out. Happy Soul is trained by the King of Keeneland, Wesley Ward, and this is his bailiwick, Turf Sprints. This is what he does. This one, I got kind of some mixed signals with this one. The Kentucky Downs race, the Music City on turf, is the lone effort we have to evaluate. Now that's kind of a weird configuration. It's like a pear shape type of track, and it does have undulations in it. So. It's kind of a hard track to evaluate compared to others. It looked like Happy Soul was completely comfortable on turf. She just got nailed at the wire by Freedom Speaks. She did run outdo Ouvre, or who's in this race and who we'll get to in a second. But it's Wesley Ward too. She's coming off a freshening, so I think you might expect a pretty good effort here. I'm just not sure that she's going to be on the engine probably early, and there's others in here who are, that's what they like to do too, and they're a little more accomplished. So at 4-1, I think you're probably going to get an underlay. If you trust Wesley Ward, I think you use her. I don't think I'm willing to do that because I think there's others in here that are more likely to win. And maybe for underneath in your exotic plays, you think about her, but I'm not going to use on the pick 5 ticket. Number 4 is Ouvre. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Anybody who speaks French can tell me otherwise, but I think that's it. Or Ouvre. Chris Block is a really good trainer, and he's a Chicago-based. Was at Arlington for years, and Jared Loveberry too. They've been together for a long time, won a lot of races together. So, if those who don't know, that's a good combination. This one has basically been close to undefeated for 2 years. Okay, you see 2022 7-0-1, and in 2023 this year she picked right up and she's won her first 2. So this one has basically only been off the board, or it hasn't been off the board in 2 years, and the one time was a third. So this one is a win machine and is at the distance that she absolutely loves. I think this one is coming off, some ungraded efforts at the fairgrounds, and I just don't see any reason to go against this one. The only time she was off the board was at Kentucky Downs in the Music City, and again, we alluded to it. She may not have liked the track because it's kind of a funky configuration. So all systems a go, I think, for this one. No reason not to use her, and I think she's a really solid win candidate. If you get 9-2, I think that's awesome value for this one. Amy C is interesting to me. I normally don't like California horses coming east. As I've mentioned before, even Bob Bafferts don't do terribly well at Keeneland. But this one, has some things to like. You see, she was trained by Chad Brown and has run East before and didn't do bad. She got her coming from France. Her first race, she won at first asking around 2 turns. But as soon as she got to Phil D'Amato has chosen to move her back to sprints, it seems, for the last couple. And that's at the unique configuration at Santa Anita with the downhill chute. So it's a unique track. But the thing I kind of like about her is she definitely has the speed, I think, to be competitive here. And more so, I think she's maybe going to have a bit of a stamina edge because she's normally running in a panel longer than what she's got today. She likes to be up near the lead, so I don't think that she's dependent on more ground. And I think that if she lays off, and she should be moving down the lane and should be able to take 2 or 3 out. So I think this one is a use at 6-1. I think that's really nice value. Manon, I guess it would be from Ireland, is trained by Brendan Walsh. It is a hot barn, as I've alluded to in the last segment. Got Luis Saez on her, but this one looks a little bit of a cut below. The Lake George is the only other significant stakes outfit attempt, I should say. I mean, this one has the graded feel, even though it isn't, because of some of the prominent contenders in here. It didn't do too well. Did okay at Saratoga. Has been, so the last couple races haven't been so great, and I think this one might be a little off form, or maybe is. I just don't see enough here to get excited about it. I think might be a little bit outclassed here, so I'm not going to use this one. Opening Buzz is kind of interesting. Jonathan Wong is a really nice trainer on the West Coast. And this one has been at Turfway the last few starts and has been okay. Hasn't done bad in the ungraded stakes level. Won at 6.5 furlongs and, interspersed with an effort around 2 turns at a mile. So hasn't done too bad. Shifting to turf, I don't anticipate to be a problem. She won an optional claimer at Del Mar. It was state bred, but you got a 94 buyer for it. So I think this one's capable of a pretty good effort. And I don't think she'd be here. Luann Machado was the jockey, and they're I think either 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 7. The two of them are together. So I think those are some good things. And at 15-1, yeah, I think she's definitely worth a look. And, if some funny things happen, you get a nice price if you put her on just to try to get some value. But I think this is one you use nonetheless in the exotics, obviously. But and maybe you put her on the ticket if you want to get a little bolt. Cadoma Dorada, just last stated graded stakes trier was the Franklin, and she was up the track against a couple of the runners in here. I don't think her numbers stack up well class-wise, and I don't intend to use her on the ticket. Miner's Queen is got Flavian Pratt on her, but I think he's doing somebody a favor, or somebody owes him one, or he owes somebody one, or whatever, because the last 2 efforts this one has had were not very good. The last one in particular, when the Mardi Gras against Ouvre, she was nowhere and doesn't really look, I don't see the numbers stacking up very well. She's been at the N1X class level for quite some time, and I don't intend to use her here. Twilight Gleaming, what can you say? I mean, this horse is... it was pretty awesome. I mean, won a graded stakes in France and has set some blistering fractions. In particular, in the Franklin, you see it 21-2, 44-4 for the first 2 fractions. That's running. Granted, she didn't win the race, but she lost to Caravel, and who won the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And Stardivine's not bad either, and he's here today. This one is, we know what she wants to do. She's going to get on the front end and try to hang on. She's got Irad Ortiz on her. Wesley Ward's training her, and she's coming off of freshening. Debuting at 4, she should move forward. That's really the only question I would have, is that whether or not she's going to build on her 3-year-old form. But I don't see any reason why she wouldn't. So I think this one is an obvious win candidate. And again, if you get 9-2, I think that's a pretty awesome price. Little Jewel is, I want to wait and see with this one. This is fairly deep water for this one. I mean, it's been doing pretty well down in Florida. And, her last effort was pretty good, beat Training to Artemis. And, but it was on the rail. I'm always a little suspicious of those trips because it's ground saving. She's parked on the outside this time. And I think she could very well get into the money. I just don't like her as a win candidate for our purposes here. So if you want to use her, I don't blame you in the exotics, but I wouldn't put her on top for a win candidate. Star Divine, her last effort in the autumn days, those are about as slow a turf sprint fractions as I've ever seen, 23 and 46. I mean, those are 2-turn fractions. So she capitalized. She just bided her time, waited, and then drew off when the time was right. Can't blame her for that. So that 96 buyer she got, let's just remember that those were really soft fractions that she built it on. So I don't know if it's completely indicative of a horse that can run that number under normal circumstances. There's a lot of speed in here, obviously. And you can see in the Franklin, that's about as hot as it gets. She's been in that type of environment before and has done okay, not great. I think this one will have to rate if she has any chance. I think she's a pretty good player here. I'm not sure that I would use her on the ticket. I think you got to have some kind of a mid-pack to late runner on this your pick 5 ticket with this much speed in a race. And this one might fit the bill. At 6-1, that's not a bad price. I would consider this one from that perspective. Excuse me. Now, there are also eligibles here, as there always are at Keeneland. Of the AEs, very quickly, Mamba Wamba is okay. I don't know really how much she stacks up class-wise with some of the very best in here. But at 12-1, Brian Lynch is a nice trainer. If she draws in, maybe think about in the exotics more than anything else. Excuse me. Sarah Harper, her lone turf effort was a total dud. And now, granted, she was running against Caravel, who won the Breeders' Cup Turf, but she's a middling sprinter at best. And to move on turf after an effort like that, I think it's kind of hard to trust her in this case. And I think she kind of needs a break. She's been had a lot of races without one, so looks a little weary to me. So I think I'd probably toss. And Fort Giselle just isn't good enough. That's the bottom line. You look at those numbers; they're extremely light, and they're on synthetic. They're not on turf. I would not want to have a horse. Bet on a horse, even at 30-1, who's never run on turf before. So I just can't see using this one, and I wouldn't. So let's take a look at the third leg. The third leg of the pick 5 is the 9th at Keeneland, and that's the Grade 3 Lexington Stakes. It's a derby prep for 3-year-olds running a mile and a 16th. And again, let's note the configuration that you've got a short stretch because the finish line is the 16th pole. So there is an advantage to early runners. I can refer you to the video I posted on this, giving a breakdown of the race. But very quickly, I'll just say that this one is, I think the early pace runners are at an advantage. Baseline Beater is a late runner, maybe underneath if you want, but not a win candidate. The ones we're primarily interested in are First Mission, number 5, his last effort around 2 turns, I thought was really impressive to break his maiden, and he looks poised and ready for another one. Brad Cox, Luis Saez, need I say more? Disarm, we know, needs this race to get into the Derby. He's running. He ran very well in the Louisiana Derby. I'm a little worried he might be a little taxed from the intense training. They've stepped it up to try to get him into the Derby. So I think he's talented. I think maybe he can handle it. I think he's one you definitely want to use, but I'm a little leery of him giving up his best effort here. Dennington, we know, he just isn't good enough, and his running style won't make it here. Empire Strikes Fast is very interesting because he beat Dreamlike, who just finished third in the Wood Memorial. I think this one has been a pleasant surprise to Bill Mott. He's got Frankie Dettori on him. He should be on the engine early. And it's not easy to win around 2 turns in your first effort. So getting a 92 buyer, I think his second start should be a good one. And I think he's one that you definitely want to consider. So the 5-6-8, in short, is what I would use in this race. The fourth leg of the late pick 5 is the 10th race. It's the Grade 1 Jenny WIley. It's running a mile and a 16th on turf for 4-year-old and up fillies and mares. And boy, is this a good race. Number 1 is Pizza Bianca. Pizza Bianca is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Champion from 2021 and is at 20-1 in this race. So that'll give you an idea. This one has been doing pretty well. I've never really been a big fan of this horse, to be honest. I thought it was a little overrated. Came back at 3 after the juvenile turf and was okay at 3. Wouldn't say lit the world on fire. It'd be nice not to deal with Regal Glory anymore, but a lot of horses can say that. Didn't do bad in the Matriarch at Del Mar, but that's California again, and the American Oaks, same thing. Where it really didn't factor very well. This one's freshened up, has a chance to get in. Christophe Clement is awesome on turf. We know this, but so is Grand Motion, so it's not like it's a big step up. I think if you like this one with a long layoff, then maybe Underneath is the best. I think the others, there's other really high-class horses in here, and I don't think this one's going to beat them. In Italian is the 7-5 favorite, and deservedly so. That Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf was really awesome if you consider who she was running against, and just fought like hell to on the lead, and just was awesome. What more can you say? Now, the only thing you got to worry about is she hasn't run since. But it's Chad Brown. I'm fairly certain he'll have this horse ready to go. If this one is at 100%, I think that there are very few in this race that can beat her. That's how confident I am. I would highly consider singling, and I don't like to do that too often, but I think this one's going to have everything her own way, and I think is a logical win candidate. And you have to use it for sure. Irad Ortiz in the jockey as well, so and she doesn't have Regal Glory to deal with, so I think this might be free and clear of this one. Queen Goddess was great in the Pegasus filly and mare turf. That was awesome, and did it at a price for us, so we were happy. This is a little bit of a step up from grade 3 Company. Now, she did win the American Oaks at Santa Anita, but again, California. Sorry, you West Coast folks, but the California turf isn't so great. She's done nothing wrong, really. I mean, she's done pretty well at the grade 3 level. We're just going to have to see if she can handle the very best. So some really good ones in here. I think coming off of freshening, she should be okay. She's got Luis Saez on her again, so all systems are go. I think if you like her, you definitely want to use her. I'm going to try to single or have my selections very tight in this race, but I think Queen Goddess, yes, you could absolutely use with confidence. Speaking of Devil, not so much. This one was... came from France and ran in the Distaff Turf Mile, Breeders' Cup, and not the Breeders' Cup, sorry, but ran a hell of a good race, but hasn't run anything that good since. The last 2 efforts have been subpar, to say the least. It seems like that she really needs pace to run to, perhaps. I don't know, but she just seems a little off. The Honey Fox in particular, she was really nowhere to be found in that race. Granted, it was a little speed favoring, but you're probably going to have the same type of situation here. I don't expect an Italian is going to run lightning fractions out of the gate. So this one is not really going to have pace to run to. Maybe Underneath, I think, is the best place for this one. But I think she's a contender here, but I think she needs a lot of help, and I'm not sure she's going to get it. With the Moonlight is very interesting. Charlie Appleby, what more can you say? He brings them over here, they win. That's just all there is to it. And this one looks pretty darn good. She had 3 efforts at Saratoga and Belmont last year, first and 2 seconds, so we know she can handle it. She can also handle a Grade 1 company. So I think at 4 years old, she's only going to get better. And this would, she's coming from the UAE. Sometimes it takes horses a little while to adjust from that, but she has had nearly a 2-month layoff since then. The only thing I wonder about a little is that her top end looks a little light, but again, that was comparing her to her 3-year-old form. I expected her to be better, and I think she's a definite win candidate, and I think you absolutely have to use. Skims, Shug McGahee, trainee. This one's debuting at 4. Was pretty good at 3. I mean, the one that Sands Point, and I remember I had her that day, so I was happy. But I don't know, kind of middling form. I mean, doesn't really look like a Grade 1 horse to me. We'll have to see a 4-year-old debut. That's a pretty ambitious placing for a guy like Shug McGahee. I think that shows a lot of faith. You've got a pretty good work tab, and this one certainly will be ready to run. The question is, how good will she do? 21 is a nice price. I would consider this one more for the exotics underneath. I'm not sure that this one is a win candidate. Henrietta Topham, Jeff Mulcahy, I really don't know much about as a trainer, but from what I gather, he's pretty good at placing his horses. This one is more of a has run at Indiana and Ellis Park. Those really don't usually produce Grade 1 stakes winners. The E.P. Taylor, her one lone effort at a Grade 1, granted it was a 1.25 miles, but was nowhere to be found. And look who she ran against: Rougier, Moira, and Flirting Bridge, who just dusted an allowance field yesterday. So this one I think might be a little overmatched, but it is debuting for the year, so could expect a pretty good effort. I don't think it'll be good enough to win. I think this one's just outclassed, but at a price maybe underneath, you think about it if some of the others are going to get worn out by trying to deal with an Italian on the lead. Freedom Speaks is the first route in a Grade 1, which is kind of ambitious, wouldn't you say? Raylu Gutierrez is a great jockey. I like Raylu, but I think, the trainer's really good with stretch outs. So that's one thing that he does really well. So you can see there is some talent here. The Music City beat Happy Soul, who we just talked about in the race 2 back, in the 8th race. And, so there's some talent here. Just don't know if she can do it around 2 turns, and I think this is really ambitious to find out. So I'm going to wait one. I think underneath maybe at a price if you like her, but I can't see this one as a win candidate. White Frost is a Belmont trainee. Got Frankie Dettori on board, 3rd off the layoff, which should be a pretty good place to be. The only thing is she may have the same setup that she had in the Honey Fox. She's got a speed, a horse on the front end who's going to be awful tough to run down. And the buyers are a little light, and maybe later in the year, I think this one might be Grade 1 caliber. Right now, I think maybe underneath is a better bet. So I think this horse will definitely run a nice race because it's Belmont. It's a Grade 1 stakes race, but I don't think this one we really want to consider for on top. The last leg of the pick 5 is the 11th race at Keeneland. It's an optional claimer for $80,000 N2X for 4-year-olds and up, fillies and mares, run at 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. Number 1 is You're So Silly. The work tab looks like this one is ready to roll, coming off a synthetic where she didn't do too bad. If you look at her lines, I think dirt is probably a preferable surface for her. So I would expect this one will be ready to run a pretty good race. Just not sure it's going to be good enough to win here, but I think you can count on this one being in good form. And, if it gets a jump on the field from the rail and gets up to the lead, might be able to factor. But I think there's others here who are a little better suited to be on the pace and win. So, you can use them if you want. I probably won't use You're So Silly. Top Gun Girl is trained by Wesley Ward and has been running mostly on turf and synthetic. But if you notice, her last race to conclude her 3-year-old year was running the dirt, and she wired the field and did it pretty easily. This being her 4-year-old debut, and this being Keeneland, I expect this one to be in top form and ready to roll. You see the tab looks like she's definitely working that way. So I would definitely use this one as a win candidate if you choose. It's a tall task to go 6.5 on the engine in a big field, but this one looks capable. Radio Days is a bit of a puzzlement to me. Shug McGahee often sends horses into an optional claimer to start their off a long layoff to start their campaign when he's pointing them to a stakes race. Now, this one ran in stakes last year at 3 and did pretty well. So you have to believe that's what this one would ultimately be pointed to. Now, if she runs in an optional claimer at the low chalk and finishes 3rd and then goes into another optional claimer, now I start to have questions that there's something wrong that he's trying to correct. So I don't know if this one's going to be in tip-top form to run in this race. And that's really the big question mark that I have. And at 7-2, I'm not sure that I want to find out. So I would probably toss this one. I don't, if you want to use her, fine. But I just don't think, I just have a feeling that you want to wait one on this one. Ironic Twist is normally Mark Ladd and Flavian Pratt are dynamite together. They win at 33%. In California, they're a really great combination. This isn't California, though. It's Keeneland. And the big issue with this one is the gate. Stumbled out of the gate, tossed head at the start, off slow. So this one definitely has some issues. And I think that's why they're running her at 7 furlongs, to give her a little more time out of the gate to get settled. Nonetheless, this one has some ability, but I'm not willing to trust a horse that has those kind of gate issues. And to start the 5-year-old year after 3 starts and they still haven't seen to correct it, I'll wait one to see what goes on. Muted is, if you draw a line through the turf effort on her start to debut at 4, she's not that bad. She did pretty well at 2 and 3 years old, and ran at the optional claimer level pretty well. Just don't really know what to expect after nearly a year layoff and now moving to dirt. Rusty Arnold's okay at 2nd off the layoff, not great. But this one was at a failure at a higher class level as the chalk at 3. So gotta wonder, could be any kind. I'm gonna wait one to see what this one looks like on dirt. Current climate presents a real question mark, and not the good one. First of all, this one's up for $80,000 in an optional claimer. That always makes me concerned, because that means they're willing to get rid of a horse, and it is an option, right? So if they take it, that means they're willing to part with the horse. The bigger issue is, if you look at this one's form, she's been running in Indiana Grand and Mahoney Valley for the most part, and the last 3 on synthetic at Turfway, and she's been okay. Not great, not bad, okay. And probably towards the not great than the not bad, until the last race. Now, she was on synthetic in an optional 40, and she blew that field away. If you go back and watch that race, especially when you consider it was on synthetic, I was incredulous. 21-3, 44-1, and had enough left that the jockey didn't even go to the whip and won by over 6 lengths. Now, that's an anomaly. Now, I'll let you draw your own conclusions as to what's going on there, but I mean, it's hard to believe that a horse could run back on that again. If she does, she blows this field away. And why is she 20-1 if that's if that figure was really bona fide, or we trust that effort to be the norm now? So I'm not willing to. I'm going to part with this horse very quickly. I just can't back a horse with that kind of hair on it. Overcharged is a win machine. Most of it is against state breds in Louisiana, but if you go back to her form, you'll see in 2021, she was stakes placed in the Grade 3 Victory Ride. And so this one can run. And I think if you draw a line through the last one where it just might have been one of those, she needed a little bit of a break, then you can't keep her off your ticket. She's she's 9 out of 10 times in the money with 8 firsts and a second. So to me, this is an obvious choice to put on your ticket. And if you get 15-1, jump for joy, because that's an awesome price for a horse that's a really big win candidate here, in my opinion. Awesome Treat is 0-3 on dirt, so it's kind of hard to evaluate. And the high is only a 53, and when everywhere else on synthetic or otherwise, it's 86. This one has very good synthetic form, and if you think that will transfer to dirt, by all means, give this one a shot. You got Frankie Dettori in the saddle, so that helps. But I don't know what to do. I don't know if there's any dirt form here. By Awesome Patriot and with Tis Wonderful underneath, those are both dirt horses, rather. So it's conceivable. I just don't know for sure. So I would leave it up to you. If you want to use her, go ahead at 8-1. That's a pretty good price. But I'm just I don't want to take the risk if this horse runs a clunker, because she just doesn't like dirt. It's just that simple for me. My Kentucky Girl is one that if you draw a line through that Mrs. Claus effort in the slop at Parks, then this one's form really fits pretty well. The other thing to consider is she didn't really do that bad on synthetic, but it clearly wasn't a great effort, losing to Current Climate, and who I just talked about in that strange race. But you also see she doesn't like turf very much. So that tells me that, she didn't have a bad effort on a surface that I don't think she really likes. And now she's coming off of it. This is one of those that all weather to dirt, I think, is a really good bet. And I think at 10-1 with some question marks on some of the other horses, I think this one is I'm very willing to take a chance with. And I think that's a great price, so I'll be using this one. Street Jam, Ian Wilkes is having to start a good meet at Keeneland. But this one has been in the N1X level for a while and has been okay, not great. Is coming off a synthetic, route to sprint with second off the layoff. Ian Wilkes is 1 for 5, so it's not that great an angle. And you can see at the N2X level in the last race wasn't very good. And it was around 2 turns, so maybe we can give a pass there. But I just don't think this one really stacks up with the better horses in this race, so I'm not going to use. Excuse me. Vicky Oliver trains Napa Candy, and this one doesn't look too bad. The only problem is it's I just don't know if the numbers stack up. It looks like this one was improving towards the end of her 3-year-old year, and this is her debut at 4. Vicky Oliver's pretty good with long layoffs, and that work tab, her last work, was 4 out of 138. So maybe this one's ready to blow it out at 4 and really mature. At 20-1, definitely worth a shot if you prefer. There's some pretty good value here. You see Bejarano stays aboard. And in this field that's got question marks, maybe you give it a shot. I'm just not quite so sure. I think there's others I like a little better. Tarabi is trained by Cherie DeVoe and it's got Luis Saez on her. That's awesome connections. You can see this one went to the Keeneland sale at $240,000. So there was obviously there's some expectations here. This one's been delivering. Won at first asking, second in the spin away at second asking. That's pretty impressive. And finished third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. I mean, that's pretty awesome resume to start your career. And the funny thing is she came out at 3 and they seemed to shy her away from the Oaks preps or anything relative to the Oaks. And her best effort was in a restricted stakes at Saratoga, and she won at a mile. But kind of wonder about that a little bit as to why they wouldn't keep moving her forward. but she's still run very good numbers. You see her last effort in September in the Dogwood, she finished second. She's had a problem with Echo Zulu, but aside from that, she's done pretty well. So the only thing you really got to wonder about is the 12 hole is a pretty difficult place for this one to be. But if any horse has the talent to overcome it, I think possibly this one does. And so I think you definitely have to use on your ticket. So let's take a look and see how the sequence breaks out. So here's our sequence for the late pick 5. In the 7th race, we're going to use 4, 7, 8. In the 8th, we're going to use 4, 5, 10, 12. In the 9th, I'll give you the option. I'm going to use the 5 and the 8, but the 3 and the 6 I consider to be worthy choices as well. So it depends on what your ticket size is, or if you want to mix and match between those 4. But that's what I would do. In the 10th, the Jenny WIley. I really want a single in Italian, but when you've got that Charlie Appleby horse hanging there with his record, you got to use as well. And then in the 11th is 2, 7, 9, 12. And I consider that to be a really tough race. And I think there's a lot of different ways to go there. But we want to keep our ticket to under $100 if we can. So if you do the math, it's a 3 by 4 by 2 by 2 by 4. That's 192 divided by 2 at a 50-cent base. It's a $96 ticket. Obviously, if you use Ticket Maker with daily racing form using the ABC grid, you can definitely reduce the cost of that ticket. But I think that gives us a pretty healthy shot at taking it down. And I think there is some value, particularly in the 11th race. You're likely to get a price, and perhaps in the 8th as well. So that's what our ticket's going to be. Pretty tough sequence, I think. Particularly that last race is a real corker. There's a lot of horses with hair on them, and there's a lot of different ways you can go. So I'll wish us all the best of luck. We got to keep our fingers crossed with that one. I think it's a pretty tough sequence. We will have the Keeneland card for Sunday as well, and we'll see what opportunity comes from that one. And we'll certainly recap as what happens in the Lexington, and we'll look at our Derby top 25. Those will be upcoming. And like I've been mentioning, I've got some other some Derby handicapping postings I think I want to do that I think you're going to enjoy. And for some of you, it's going to be a little old hat, the more experienced players in the group. But for the younger people or the new ones newer to the game, I think you're really going to get a lot out of it. And I'll have more details as they become apparent to me. But in the meantime, if you do like what you see here, of course, please like and subscribe. And we really do appreciate your viewership. And I'm still working on that McAfee thing. And please keep those suggestions coming as to how to fix it. Nolan in particular, I really appreciate you reaching out and trying to help there. So I'll be talking to you soon. And until then, best of luck this weekend and be well.